Inside the Chamber is brought to you by presenting sponsor, Naperville Bank and Trust.
Welcome to Inside the Chamber. I'm Kaylin Risvold, President and CEO of the Naperville Area Chamber of Commerce. Inside the Chamber is our way of bringing a healthy dialogue about meaningful topics that matter to our business community to life. Our chamber mission of moving business forward towards an engaged, thriving community happens when we are your advocate and your resource for our community. And Inside the Chamber allows us to do and be just that. Our program today is all about hiring. We're going to talk about what employers need to do when they hire, tips for those doing the interviewing, and tips for those on the interviewee side. Joining us on our expert panel is Samantha Meredith, WIOA case manager from Directions Training, Bill Lehman, general manager of Employ Source Temp Solutions, and Duckie Huynh, a business performance advisor at Insperity. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. And let's dive straight in. Samantha, I'm going to start with you. When posting a job, what are a few tips for the employer?
Being very specific and making sure that you're letting the candidate know exactly what it is that they're applying for and what your expectations are, so that there's nothing that's misleading or overlooked when they're applying for that, and they're confident in knowing that what they're applying for, they're qualified for.
Absolutely. Now, Bill, have you noticed due to COVID-19 and the pandemic, how has that really changed this whole process of posting for jobs and interviewing? How has that changed what employers are doing?
I'm not sure that the posting piece has changed a whole lot. Employers are still going out and using, technology on job boards, networking, social media to try to find the best candidates. But I think the interview process has certainly changed. I think the advent of Zoom becoming, or other video interview platforms, using those to screen candidates, you might see the candidates a little bit more in the beginning of the process, where before it might have been a phone screen. So I think people are getting comfortable with Zoom and other video platforms. That's, I guess it's changing the way that employers are looking at it, and also the way job searchers are preparing for those first screens, where before it was a phone call, now it might be a Zoom call.
And Bill, do you see that sticking around long term, of the phone screens going away in lieu of a video meeting?
Yeah, I think they're all an important process in the job search. I think phone screens are convenient. Somebody's in a car, they don't have a lot of time if they're reaching out to candidates. But I think we found that the video call, that the video interview is a real useful resource and a great tool to use when you're searching for candidates. So I think it's here to stay, but I think you'll also see the in-person interview come back, especially in the final steps. I think that's still a real important feature, being able to understand the candidates, and the candidates being able to understand the job and the hiring manager and the culture of the company that they're looking to interview for.
Sure. And Samantha, now when we're talking about posting jobs as a business, do we put in there virtual, remote? Is that a more common question now, and will that question go away?
That's actually one of the things that I had a note to talk about, was that now in the process, you do see a lot more that there's virtual work, there's remote work. And that's one of the things that's even changed in the interview process, is asking questions around remote work. Do you have a quiet place? Things like that. But then on the employee side, they're not all the time used to being able to work from home. So then you have the concern of, oh, well, my kids are in the background. Are they going to hear that? Are they going to bust into the room? So there's a lot more worry around that, too, for people that are looking.
Interesting. Now, Duckie, when we're talking about people posting jobs and looking for it, I recently posted a few jobs on for the chamber, and I put in there cover letters required. Is cover letters, is that something that a lot of people really require? And what's something that people can put in their cover letters to make them stand out in this virtual world?
So cover letters are never really required unless they're explicitly said it is, but you should always include one, because cover letters and resumes are two entirely different things. Your resume should be what your educational background, your skill set, and really have those details about your work history and your experience. Your cover letter is what sells you. It's your marketing plan, marketing sheet. You have to show the value that you bring to the organization. And so it should never regurgitate what you have on your resume. It should be in addition to it and support everything that it's saying on there. So resume is the facts, cover letter is your marketing piece. And always do something eye-catching for it, because a lot of times when people see cover letters that come through, they're boring. Oh, I'm applying for this job and whatnot. Nobody wants to see that. Sometimes they're looking at 500 applications a day. And if you have a boring cover letter, they're going to skip your resume. Always use words that are included in the job description. And what I actually used to do is I used to actually put a mantra, a phrase, a vision. My favorite one was "Help others succeed and you will too," from Les Brown's. So I do that, do something that's different and really be excited and be proud of your achievements. So.
Should cover letters be customized to each job posting, or is there something wrong with just including a form cover letter?
It should always be customized. Everything should be customized, whether it's a cover letter or a resume, or even a quick email introduction, which should be a short blurb of your cover letter. It should always be tailored to the position. Obviously, if you're going to be applying for a graphic design position, you're going to want to make something colorful, something fun. But if you're applying for a job at Ernst & Young or something, then obviously you want it monochrome and very professional and straight to the point. And also, I think of what a lot of people don't do is they don't have a call of action at the end of that cover letter, which you should, where you should have your phone number and say, this is where you can best reach me for extra questions, but also add, I will be reaching out, to show that type of initiative and do it. Make good on your promise if you're going to be reaching out.
Absolutely. And Bill, do you have anything to add on what people applying for jobs can really do to stand out in their cover letter or resume in that list of 500 or so that Duckie's talking about?
Yeah, I think she brought up a lot of really good points. I think, again, I'll just say is being specific to the job that you're applying for and being able to relate something that's eye-catching or attention in the first sentence or two of that cover letter. Chances are that they're not going to read the whole thing unless something catches their attention and makes them think you're an attractive candidate. So really thinking outside the box a little bit, but still keeping it professional, still not doing anything crazy. It still needs to look professional, and but something specific that's going to grab their attention certainly is important.
Sure. And Samantha, any tips from you on something to be that attention grabber, to do that does help grab attention, to get that phone screen or to get that first round interview?
You always want to quantify what you've done in your previous roles, or what, again, like Duckie said, something that makes you stand out, something that makes you stand out as an individual, but that is specific to the role that you're applying for, that's going to grab their attention and will attract them to you based on what they're looking for. So again, tailoring it is definitely a good thing and a must.
Yeah, and I will say, like in my job postings, I put cover letters are required. I personally really like the cover letters, and I like the attention grabbing. I like when it's customized. I like when it's tailored, because I feel like you researched into my company, you looked at my company, you went that extra step to really see how you would fit in with us. And I noticed that on a small scale, and I'm certainly not looking at 500 applicants a day. So once we start that first round interview, be it Zoom, Teams, on the phone, etc., what is something that interviewees can do to prep for that short first meeting? Samantha, what are your ideas?
You just brought up one of them. They always need to research the company, find out what they do, what their vision is, their missions, those types of things. But they also need to be prepared with questions. When you don't ask questions, it's clear that you haven't done your research. So make sure that you have a few questions that you have prepared ahead of time, so that you can show that to the interviewer that you have researched and that you are interested.
Duckie, what are some examples of good questions that you've heard interviewees ask in an interview?
So questions on their specific role. For example, what are the benchmarks that you want to see in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? Questions in regards to the organization, like what are the biggest challenges of the organization? What are the largest successes? Where do you see the organization in 5 years? And also, to the interviewer, what do you like best about the job? How do you feel like you fit in the culture? What was your pathway to where you were within the organization? So just really thoughtful, meaningful questions to engage that interviewer and to show that, you are excited and you want this job and you've done your research, just like Samantha and Bill said earlier.
And Bill, your tips for best questions to have interviewees kind of stand out or that they should really be asking during this process?
Yeah, I think you want to ask specific questions. Samantha and Duckie both with great points. In addition, I would say, asking the interviewer what kind of people have been successful in this role? What kind of attributes and skill sets did they have? And then when you get the answer to that, you want to be able to go to your experience and your background and be able to tie those together. So being able to say, I see that, you say that this time management is very important in this role. I have excellent time management skills and I've exhibited that in my last, my previous 2 positions in doing X, Y, Z. So being able to be specific, being able to tie, once the interviewer tells you what they're looking for and tells you what is successful in that role, being able to show that you have those attributes and skills and have had that experience is very compelling to the interviewer. They see that, they can quantify the fact that, you can do the things that they're looking for. So I think that's really important.
Awesome, thank you. And I will share my favorite question when we come back.
Naperville Bank and Trust has the expertise, knowledge, and experience to help you reach your business goals.
They provide all the tools that you would ask that we as a growing business need of a bank. Most importantly, to me, it's a great personal relationship we have with Tom and John and our bankers.
It was the best thing we could have done in banking. And banking can be very cold. What the bank brings to us is that warm feeling when you come into the bank and people say, "Hi, Greg."
It's about being part of the community again, about being a name again, about having credit for who your business is instead of just being a number.
Naperville Bank and Trust. Bring it home.
Welcome back. So one of my favorite questions to be asked through the interview process is, what questions or concerns do you have about me as a candidate? I find that to be a very bold question. It puts the interviewer on the spot a little bit, but it also gives me time to address some of the concerns or questions that I have so that I can be upfront through the process. And I think it's incredibly important to really be upfront and honest and authentic with each other. And that kind of plays into some situational and behavioral questions. So when an interviewer asks an interviewee some of those situational behavioral questions, give me an example, give me a time. Is there a better process to come up with an example on the fly that can really demonstrate that? Duckie, do you have any tips?
Sure. So one of the tips that I would give interviewees when they are asked those type of situational and behavioral questions is to use the STAR method. So the STAR method is S, talk about the situation. T, the task at hand or the task that you're assigned. A, the actions and processes that you use to solve that problem. And R, the results. So whenever you're thinking about that question, just always follow that method, and you have a surefire way of answering the question the way the interviewer wants to hear, and giving that specific example. So you're not doing it a roundabout way or thinking on the fly, but even if you are thinking on the fly, you're doing it in a methodical manner that will definitely help you in the success of that interview.
And Bill, do you have any tips for when someone asks you a question that you're really not prepared for?
Well, I think it's important to be honest. If you don't have the answer that they're looking for, be honest about it, and maybe try to turn it to another example of something that you're prepared to talk about. Again, the research that goes into and the preparation that goes into getting ready for an interview, you should be very comfortable with what they're looking for in the job description, and you should already be prepared to talk about a couple of things that that you have in your background or your experience that you think tie in very well for what they're looking for. So if you are asked a question that you don't really have an answer to, or maybe you don't have experience in that area, try to turn it to something else where you can show that you have the skill set or the experience that that matches with what they're looking for.
Absolutely. And Samantha, do you have anything to add? Is there a good way to pivot so people aren't just saying no? Tell me about a time you've managed someone. Well, I haven't. Is there a better way to make that transition?
And very much like Bill said, one, be upfront and honest that you're not prepared to answer that question. However, tie it to something, like he was saying, tie it to something else. So while you may not directly have managed people, you'd still probably have done some type of management within your role. So tie that in and get it back to what they're asking, but in a roundabout way to still highlight you and what you've done.
And at what point can you bring in outside experience, right? I may not have managed at work, but I manage at my church group. I manage at my kids' school. Duckie, is that something that's appropriate to bring in when you're trying to give good examples in the interview?
Absolutely, because those are life skill sets that are embedded in you. When I talk about management, the first thing that comes to my head, I manage my family, my husband, my 3 very rambunctious boys, dealing with different personalities, different schedules, and yet I manage to coordinate it all. That is absolutely applicable to a job description when things are thrown at you, and that you can definitely react in an emergency situation, especially when you have families and things go wrong. So no, absolutely, I think that's very applicable to the job, to the job and the interview, and I see nothing wrong with bringing those types of examples. It also shows the personality as well, a little bit more about you, genuineness. So absolutely.
Yeah, and that authenticness, and Bill, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. How important is it for you to be authentic? As much as this is an interview, it's an interview on both sides. You want it to be a good cultural fit for both of you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, getting back to being prepared and understanding, everything that goes into the job as much as you can on the forefront. I always say to have fun in an interview. Don't be afraid to smile. If the interviewer says something funny, don't be afraid to laugh. It's okay. It's okay to have a sense of humor. In fact, most people are looking for that. So I think the more comfortable you are in the situation, the more prepared you are, the more you're going to enjoy the interview, the more you're going to learn about the company that you're interviewing for and the person that you're interviewing with. Gives them a chance to show their lighter side and maybe what they're really all about, which is something that's important when you're going to interview for a job and understanding who you're going to be working for. So I think, having fun, smiling, laughing is all important in the process as well.
That is important. And what else is important to me personally is the follow-up. What is your best recommendation for following up once the interview is over?
It's very important. Even though times have changed, the way we're interviewing and the job hunt process, I think the follow-up is critical to, again, you're always looking to differentiate yourself from the other candidate. So timely follow-up, emphasizing shortly, be short and concise and just tell them why it is that you are good for the job. Pointing out a couple things that might have been talked about in the interview, some specific things. Maybe you didn't get a chance to mention something that you feel is very important about your background and experience and how it ties to the job. It's an excellent time to bring that to the table and highlight that piece as well. So maybe you missed out in the interview, but you can still talk about that in a follow-up. So I think it's very important to do it in a timely basis. Maybe not a hard copy anymore, but certainly an email or some other way to get it out quickly.
Yeah, with the way hiring decisions are made, I feel like by the time I might get the hard copy thank you letter, we might have made a choice.
Right.
Samantha, tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are on appropriate follow-up and what's the best way to stand out as a candidate.
Like Bill said, you definitely want to make it in a timely fashion. You don't want to wait, because by the time they get it, like you said, Kaylin, they could have already made a decision. So you want to be timely with it. You definitely want to point out things that maybe happened in the interview that they're going to remember, that are going to make you stand out and you come back to the front of their mind, because they could have interviewed 20 people and here they get this note from Samantha and they think, who in the world is Samantha? I don't even remember. But if I put in something that we talked about that was specific to me or to them, they're going to remember me, and then my face will pop up and they'll remember.
Awesome. And Duckie, I feel like we keep talking about this, and you brought it up as well, is just that customization. You know, customization in the follow-up letter, customization in the cover letter. It's the whole process is about being custom, and that takes a lot of work for both sides. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to do that customized follow-up? Does that make a difference, do you think?
I absolutely believe it makes a difference, and I still believe in the hard copy. I used to actually always, whenever I came out of a meeting, I'd have thank you cards and stamps in my car. So right then and there, I would write something, refer it back to a situation in the meeting or something we talked about, and then send it off the mailbox right in front of their office or whatnot. And I've always used that as specified. You open up my glove compartment, there's thank you cards, because that to me really helps you stand out. In one particular situation, where I wrote a letter to a law firm, and I was very vulnerable in my letter and just talked about me especially and the traits I brought, and it got me an interview and going in there, and then having a great mentor later on in life, just because of that one thank you card that I sent out handwritten.
That's awesome. What a great story. All right, final tips and tricks. Samantha, give us your best tips and tricks for those on both sides here, those looking to hire, those rock star candidates, and those looking to raise their hand and say, hey, I am your person.
So one of the things on the interview side is to make sure that you're asking questions that will really help you to understand that candidate's personality, because that's going to help you understand where they're going to fit into the organization and how they're going to fit in. And by not getting to know that piece, for instance, if there's someone that they tell you right away, I don't like to be micromanaged, but you know that in that role, that manager does have a tendency to micromanage a little bit, they're not going to stay, and you're going to be back in this hunt again. So asking those questions up front to understand where they're going to fit in, how they'll fit in, and if you can make that work. And then on the candidate side, being positive, just make sure that you're being positive in the interview. A lot of times they're going to ask you questions about your previous employer, your previous position, and it may not have been the best experience, but you don't want to portray that. So you just, maybe that you and your manager just didn't get along, and you can say our styles were very different, but it taught me a lot and I was able to grow professionally. To be positive and move on.
I really like that piece of advice right there. It goes back to the authenticness we've been talking about of, hey, this may not have worked, but I learned from it. And I think that's important to show kind of how you've grown as a professional. Thank you for that. Bill, what about you? Tips and tricks for our interviewees and interviewers?
I think on the interviewer side, I would say sometimes employers don't prepare the same way that the job seeker or the interviewee is preparing. So the more time you put into it in preparing for the interview, both to look at the resume and understand the background of the candidate, as well as really define some of the things that you're looking for in a candidate before you walk into the interview, it will help you do a better job interviewing and understand better if the candidate's a good fit or not. And on the candidate side, don't ever forget the kind of call to action at the end of the interview, reinstating, hey, I really enjoyed the time. I think, the more I learned about this position, I really feel that I'm a great fit and I'm very interested in moving forward. What can I expect as the next step? So really showing that interest and affirming that you really want the job and that you're looking forward to the next step, I think is important as the interviewee.
Awesome, thank you. And Duckie, what about you?
On the employer side and employee, my best advice is thinking it as a marketing. So when you're doing a job description, market it the way a social media platform would do it to get the interest that you want. Same thing, make sure that you're doing research for the person that you want, because you want the right person in the right seat. Because if they're not going to stay with the organization. They're not going to be engaged, and you're not going to get that best ROI on that employee. As well as the employee side, again, the genuineness, authenticity, and being creative and just thinking outside of the box to help you stand out. So always that customization. Your smile is especially like Bill said, always smile, always laugh. That is, your trademark. And just have people warm up to you, and both sides prepare. Be clear, be concise.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much, Samantha, Bill, and Duckie. Thank you for joining me and sharing your expertise and your wisdom. And thank you for watching Inside the Chamber. Thank you for investing time and becoming more aware of what the Chamber does for the community. And watch us each month right here on NCTV 17. And remember, the Chamber is your resource for knowledge, power, and business-forward programs that stand up for you and our community. Thank you.
Inside the Chamber is brought to you by presenting sponsor, Naperville Bank and Trust.